Hey everyone. So I am super excited to introduce you to a good friend of mine, someone I've worked with, someone who is absolutely brilliant. And more than anything, I want us to have a conversation around the flexibility of our lives. As someone who, based on business and circumstance, right, with divorce and all these transitional things, I've had to move, and I've had the blessing of, being in boarding school, living in central Pennsylvania. I was born in DC. I've lived in Atlanta. I'm in LA now. And having made these moves and, stayed in each of those places for several years, I really have learned that you're not committed to being in one place forever, and you can still be there for 5 years, 10 years, and that's a meaningful time to build a relationship, with the town, with the area, to nurture your growth where you are, but sometimes a move is required to match your lifestyle, to help your children, and it's just something we don't often think of. It feels like wherever we are, that's where we have to stay, and that's the conversation I wanna have right now because your dream life could be someplace else and you just got to get to it. So, that being said, I've brought on my dear friend, Sonaya Williams, who is easily one of the most practical, sensible, organized, logistics based people in the world. And she's been living as an expat now for years. And here's why this is different: she's been living internationally with her whole family. Yes. And she has moved at the drop of a hat. She has all the answers that we need, Sanaya. Thank you so much for taking out the time. I'm super excited to chat about this with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, yes. No, so I mean, first and foremost, I have to tell you, I know you in other capacities through business, through, leveraging your corporate skills, your agency, all that. But you have started speaking very heavily about your expat life because everybody wants to know about it. And you have this like crazy Substack that is so good that is trolling me daily. It hurts my feelings. It really does. Like,
It's not intentional. I'm just trying to drop some hints.
oh yeah, some major hints. Like, and understand y'all, if you have any friends who live abroad, you probably know what this is like. They go and live abroad, and then all they do is try to get all their friends to come over there. It's a setup. It's a setup, is what it is.
Come to the better side. It's it's
Right,
it's
yeah, you
fun
guys are
over
like,
here.
"I don't need to visit you, you come over here," right? Like, that's the technique, that's the ticket. So where are you currently, and where did you just move from?
So I'm currently living in Doha, Qatar. I came in August, so it's been about almost 5 months,
Wow.
and we moved from the UK. So we were in London.
Now, is London the first place that you moved? Because you're not well, let's take it all the way back. Where are you originally from?
So I'm originally American. Well,
Okay.
my family's from the Caribbean. If you want to go way back, my family's from
Right.
the Caribbean, St. Vincent.
Mhm.
Uh, up in New York, school in New Jersey, and I fell in love. I moved to England. My husband's British. Lived in London for I moved to England when I was 8 months pregnant.
Oh, wow,
Um,
not 90 Day Fiancé. Oh, girl. I was like, "Wait a minute."
listen, it was that whole figuring that all out was
I
like,
could only imagine.
got engaged and found out I was pregnant the same weekend, but that's a whole 'nother story.
Wow. Been there. Sounds familiar. I know what that's like. I'm like, as I'm
Yes.
being kicked from within. It all happened so quickly. But yeah, so I get that. So you moved from Jersey. When you were in Jersey, did you ever think that you'd live anywhere else? Like live like full-time whole life?
I didn't, no. I mean, outside of the Caribbean, I had not been to Europe
So you
before
weren't
I
like a
met.
traveler. It wasn't even like, and I love hearing that just because I think a lot of us just I'm speaking for myself here, but we hear people who say, I'm going to pack up and live in South Africa. I'm going to pack up and live in Germany. And it feels like, but they were always people who had itchy feet and they always weren't satisfied where they are. And it also feels like they're the type of people, that are always moving every year anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they don't really like roots. They live off their backpack, and like Stanley Cup. You know what I mean? Like that's like, but you're not like that. Like you're actually putting
I
down
was
roots. You
not
have
the I was
kids.
no. I liked being stable. I loved
Mhm.
having home. I
Mhm.
liked my routines. So no, I would never that person. Like I went to the Caribbean on vacation with my family, things like that. I did do global business. So I went to Prague and like Czechoslovakia for like 2 weeks in school. But other than that, I had not been to Europe.
Wow. And so when you knew that you were moving, for relationship, for kids, for all of that, you also knew it was gonna be permanent and that you'd be setting up family and
Yeah.
house. Now, it must have been I'd like to say, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Is it a little easier when you're moving to a place where that's where your person's from, right? Like, they must have had some
Yeah.
idea or
Easy in the fact that everything's set up there and there's someone there to show you around, but hard in the fact that I left everything I knew behind.
Mm.
So he was in his comforts, but me, I had to figure everything out, like, myself again.
So,
And
I can't imagine that internationally. Having moved to, LA for, a while, the thing that people commonly say is it takes 3 years to adjust. It takes 3
mhm,
years to, be able to drive without GPS, to have an idea of where you are, to have,
yeah,
like, community or a regular yoga place or your favorite restaurants, and it takes a while. Would you say that that's the same abroad? Because, it's scary to think you're in a new place and it doesn't feel like home.
it is. It does take time. I think if you're making that move abroad, it may not take a full 3 years because you can fully immerse yourself,
Mm,
especially if you're here alone. So when I went to England for the first time, it was different because I was pregnant. I had to then figure out like that whole situation of, oh, what's a motherhood gonna look like here? I had what I
mm,
thought motherhood was gonna look like when I had kids back in, America. I was like, oh, I can take them to all these places.
sure.
But all the places were new in the UK. I had no idea what I was gonna do,
That's
where we're gonna
super
live.
brave. Like, I can honestly say that's super brave. Like, getting ready to do this portion of motherhood for the first time, I could not imagine going someplace totally new and not even being like, "Well, at least when I see a Target, I know what's inside there." Because that's always something that's like I have traveled a lot internationally, and one of the things that always registers for me is I don't necessarily know what stores have. Like, you can go to, like, Italy, for instance, go into a gas station, what you think is like, "Oh, I'll go grab a soda or something," and it will literally be a laundromat. You know what I mean? Like, you just like Europe is wild like that. You know what I mean? You're like, "Not laundry and
Different.
gas." You know what I mean? Like, it's just like you don't know. Or you think you're going into a pharmacy and the pharmacy is like, "We literally only have pharmaceuticals. Like, we do not have a packet of gum. That's not what we sell
None of the
here."
extras. No,
Right, right.
no.
It's like it just is it's a totally different, energy, So to have to do that as a mom postpartum in a new place when the only person you have is your partner, and then let's talk work, right? Because I think it's easy to, talk about some of the feeling stuff and we'll circle back to that, but I mean, did you leave your career and then go there and start a career? Were you remote? Like, what did you do for money?
So I had my business before I left. Um,
Mm,
was able to bring that over with me. However, I scaled down the amount of clients I had because
sure.
new country, new life, new everything. I
Pregnant?
couldn't stress
Like,
myself out. I
yeah,
couldn't do it.
yeah. I couldn't
Yeah, so
either.
I scaled back, but I then got into networking and meeting people and tried to grow after I had the baby, but then we were only there for a little less than a year, and then we moved to Denmark.
Wait,
So it's like,
what? Okay, so plot twist. I didn't even know all the pieces. Okay, so all these moves that were happening, I have found that a lot of the people I know who, once they realize what moving is like, you feel way less wedded. I think it's maybe 2 moves before you start realizing, "Oh, where do I wanna go?" It's actually now that I know I can do this, what does this look like? So for me, when we were in Maryland and we decided to move to Atlanta, in my previous marriage with my kids, a large part of it was, 1, cost of living, right? Like, I wanted to be able to I had a bigger family overnight, wanted to move someplace where I'd get more for less. But then also, was flying a lot. So for me, it was as simple as I wanted to cut a connection out because I always connected through Atlanta and I could literally be home 2 to 3 hours earlier, and it would just be easier. So that was a big reason to move to Atlanta for us. But once I moved to LA, it was like, "Oh, I don't even have to stay here. I could be in LA for 10 years, and then move with when it's time for the baby to start kindergarten and the other one's in college, maybe this is when we move to Nevada, or maybe this is when we move in, or like the way you're trolling me, this is when we move internationally or whatever." So for you, you're in, England, and then you're like, "We're going to Denmark," and now you're, in the UAE. So tell me about how Denmark came about. Was it just like, let's try something different?
yeah, for my husband, it was. He had never lived outside of London, outside of the UK
Oh,
at that time.
wow.
He traveled a lot. So he'd been all over, but had
Mhm.
never lived anywhere else. So he'd always wanted to work abroad. And a job opportunity came and we had a little baby. So it was the perfect time. You didn't have to worry about school, didn't have to worry about any of that. So we were
Most
like,
people would
if
not
you
say that. Most people would say, "I have a little baby. I just moved here. Like, I just figured I got someone who can braid
Very
my
true.
hair. Like, I just figured it out. I am not moving, but I also
Yeah.
get it. It's always so interesting though, because in Europe, you're running into something that's a little bit different from the States, right? Moving from, you know, frankly, moving from East Coast to West Coast is a bit of a culture shock. It does feel a little different. But moving from like Maryland to Atlanta, it was just like, okay, it's just a different type of suburb. In Europe, though, I mean, moving from England to Denmark or Denmark to Spain or Spain to Norway, we're talking laws, languages, style of government, culture, foods. I mean, that's not a tiny shift. How did you guys navigate that?
It was big. I mean, we moved for a job, so that helped us a lot,
Mhm.
but one of my things was we need to move to an English speaking country. Although they speak Danish in
Sure.
Denmark, everyone spoke English, like, we didn't have to learn the language.
I mean, that helps
Um,
ease the transition for sure. Absolutely.
it does, but it was more of a it was a culture shock going there, like, there are not many of us there.
Sure, sure,
Um,
sure.
that became one of the reasons where my daughter, every black man she saw, she's like, "Oh, that's dada." I mean,
Oh,
she was little,
bless it.
but like, "No, that's not dada."
Yeah, no, no, but it could be uncle. It could be cousin.
It
We
could
don't even
be.
know at this point.
It was hard for her. I think it was just
Yeah.
hard for her as well. We were there during COVID. It was probably one of the best places to be
Oh,
because
wow.
the numbers were super low. Everyone listened.
Mhm,
Um, Schools were only closed for a month. Moving to Denmark, I think for us, it was the best place to live,
mhm.
especially with kids, especially as a young family. There were tons of things to do for kids always. It's like, what do they say? Denmark is the happiest place on earth to live.
Right,
And
they
it
say
really
yeah, Denmark, I think, and Finland always rank as
the
just
Nordics.
honestly, in general, any place that ranks happily like that, but is cold as heck, I'm like, "There's something." You know what I mean? There's gotta be something in the
A few
water.
months out of the year.
Yeah, I was like, "There's gotta be something," because y'all are and, aren't they big on tulips, or is that Amsterdam or no, I don't know, but it's gorgeous over there, and also, I think that there's a lot of cheese in the culture. I support all of it. Like, I feel like these are
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
standard things that we could easily be borrowing from as Americans in order to improve
Yeah.
our
I
life.
mean,
I
Dwayne was able to leave work at 3 to
Mhm.
go pick the kids up from school. There's
Wow.
nowhere in banking in America that that would be allowed.
Oh, as in, like, that wasn't, like, a special privilege, that was just an understood thing, like, "Of course, go get your kids."
Yeah, a lot like,
Wow.
everybody would be leaving the office around 3 o'clock to go pick their kids up from nursery.
And then you just come back to work, or if you
No,
have
you're
to,
done, you go home. You go home.
listen, I
I
told you
mean,
guys she's gonna troll us. She's gonna have us all of us right now are like, "Denmark," writing it down real
talk
time.
about maternity leave, though. Maternity leave in Denmark, you get paid up to 24 months paid maternity leave in Denmark.
That's not maternity leave, that's you that's 2 years is not maternity leave, that's raising your child. You're getting paid to raise your child for 2 years. That's
Hey, I got
incredible.
paid to send my kids to nursery. Used to get $400 a month for each kid to
That's
put them in nursery.
incredible. That's incredible. I again, star, maternity leave paid, like, all the notes. I'm like, "Sis can afford a coat, okay? I don't even mind what the weather is giving at this I can wear layers. I can wear layers." And, who knows, they might give me one at customs. "By the way, you look like you'll be cold. Here's a coat." So, okay, so love hearing this about that region. How did it feel, just kinda getting to some of the tough stuff, culturally, right? So there's family units. You say you're from the Caribbean, obviously, like, my family is African. We have cultural things. Family is part of it. How did you navigate that? Family, friends, and you said there weren't a lot of black people, like, that's real, like, and when I say a lot of black people, like, that matters, especially for us as black women, like, hair and, all those cultural things, but also as Americans, sometimes, as much as Americans can, I think, collectively get on our nerves, like, when we're here, sometimes you're just craving someone who understands, like, "No, this is a good burger. Like, this is a good burger," you know? Like, what did you do? Like, Super Bowl Sunday and Thanksgiving and things that just don't register here. How did that feel?
Yeah. It was definitely hard, especially because the time zone difference, you couldn't just pick up the phone and call someone.
Mhm.
Because I think back then I was 6 hours ahead.
Oh, yeah, it's another day.
Uh,
It's just different. It's like,
yeah.
you're asleep when I'm awake, and that's that.
It was hard, but finding other expat communities, I connected with people from Canada, I connected with other Americans.
Mhm.
There were a lot of Australians there,
Oh, wow.
and that kind of made it they became our family.
Wow.
Like, it was just the 3 of us when we first moved, and then I had my 2nd daughter there,
Mhm.
and then finding connecting through play dates, of
Sure.
course, because
Kids
kids
help. They
always
really
have play
do.
dates.
Yeah. Kids really help.
And yeah, it just became they became family. Like, I loved to do Christmas, so I would do Christmas Eve dinners, and then
Mm.
people would come over, we'd have birthday parties. It was great. It was hard at first, but it
Sure.
probably took me about a year and a half to feel comfortable living in that country and just finding my own space, finding out me, getting back to work, getting back to everything
Mhm, mhm. So I have a
before
question
yeah.
about that then. So one of the things that I have noticed about me, which I don't know will always be the case with my moves within the States, is every single time I've ever moved, I had the intent to stay. So I didn't move thinking even though I would honestly say my first move to LA because that was probably the most, like, impromptu, and unexpected, and also LA is the type this is the richest city in the richest state in the richest country, like, it's just ridiculous. So it's one of those things where it's like, "Can we stay? Like, how are we gonna stay here?" It begs a lot of questions, but outside of that, this is probably the first place I've ever said, "I don't have to stay," right? But every
Mhm.
place I've ever moved, it's always been like, this is where I plan to be for the long run. And I built with that intention, found the best schools, got the best homes, settled in. I think a lot of people, when they think expat, think that there's a formula of temporary. At least that's how I process it, where it's like, well, let me rent something first until I get to know neighborhoods. Now let me figure out what the schools are. Now let me, but to even get to the point where you're like buying a home and all that. So can you walk us through some of those logistics? Because I know that's your specialty. Like, is there a process when you land if you're planning to stay forever, or do you kind of treat it like it's temporary because you might be leaving Denmark? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. For us, when we went to Denmark, we knew it was temporary. We said we were gonna do this for a couple of years because we wanted our kids to go to school in England. So
Interesting.
it Copenhagen was temporary from the start. Like, we never hung any pictures up on the wall. We never hung any pictures up on the wall. We had bought our furniture in from England, so
Mhm.
Copenhagen was temporary. We were moving back. When we moved back to the UK, we thought that was permanent. There were no more moves in
Right.
my
Right.
house. And then there we were looking to buy, right? Looking to buy a house, looking to set up shop. Everything was, you know, this is
Settled.
it.
Yes.
And then Qatar came
Mhm.
and we were like, oh, well, this is one of those opportunities you can't pass up. But we're only going to do it for a few years. So this is what we said. We were coming here for 3 to 4 years
Sure.
max, and then going back because we want the girls to go to high school in the UK.
Wow.
But it's definitely for me, even
Mhm.
we've been here 5 months, it's like high school in the UK, they're getting British education here. It can still work here, we can still
Right.
stay here, happen. But our initial thought was it was gonna be temporary.
Interesting. So it does seem to echo some of that temporary, and it's also and I really hope everyone's hearing this right now. I really, really want people to understand that temporary can still be 5 years. It can still get kids through a certain amount of education. Temporary can be, 10 years, like, and 10 years is meaningful. I actually have a real good friend of mine whose mom has had 4 marriages, each of which was 10 years, and each one bore a kid, and I wouldn't say she was playing games in any of them. She just evolved. It's just, that being said, there's something to be said for, not feeling wedded if you think that there's someplace else that could work. But I want to talk about the kids thing. So when I tell you, most of the mamas listening to this, most of the women listening to this, one of the hardest things is that idea of, so my kid's supposed to have all their friends in middle school, have their whole life built, then uproot and go somewhere else. They were little at first, right? So that isn't the same sort of issue. How is that going for you now that your kids are older and, "Oh, we're gonna go for high school." Like, I feel like your kids might revolt, like, how does that work?
We literally just finished this conversation with them. So I like to involve my kids in the decisions that are gonna impact their life, even
Mm.
if it's, friends. Because as adults, you'll make new friends, you go somewhere else,
Yeah,
friends
or
are
you won't even talk listen, all your friends in high school, well, they'll be the people that you'll be looking at later like, "Wow." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
that's the truth of it. They likely won't even be the people you talk to 4 years from then, you know?
Yeah. But as a si my kids are 6 and 8. 6 and 8, they don't understand that friends are their world.
Sure.
Playdates are the thing.
For sure.
And right now, I'm in the process of wanting to move schools. So today,
Mm.
I took them to see a new school, that me and their dad saw yesterday. And we sat down at dinner and we're like, "Okay, what do we think about the school?" First off, let me tell you why I want to move schools, why I want to take you out of the school you have
Mhm.
and explain, we don't want them to be behind, education's
Mhm.
important, all the good things.
Mhm.
And my older one, she's all excited because the school that we saw, the athletic facilities are amazing. She's like,
Sure.
"When can I move?"
Sure.
The younger one, the 6-year-old is like, "But I like my friends. What about my
Mm.
friends?" And so it's having this conversation with her about, "Remember when we came from England and you were worried about friends? You were worried about
Mhm.
making friends, but now you have friends. We're not leaving again. We can still, meet up with them and have all that, but you will make new friends as well." That shouldn't be the concern of why you don't wanna move. But I think involving the kids in the decision, every decision that especially now that they have a voice and they have an opinion, involving them
Mhm.
has made it much easier.
No, that's really helpful. It's also helpful to hear that this isn't really a conversation we're gonna avoid anyways, right? Like, as parents, I'm having these conversations right now from here, where you have a kid who, from a divorce situation, it's like, "Hey, you're moving states. Like, what does it look like?" You're gonna have to make new friends. Or, our daughter just went from public school to private school. So it was like, here are conversations that we have to have. And when you're in the private school circuit where you stay for middle school, it's not uncommon to switch for high school as you learn more about your personal, professional, creative exploits. Am I going more performing arts? Am I going more, athletics or whatever else? So it's interesting to hear that if we are already having these conversations, we're pretty equipped to have them if, the school is down the street or if the school is, across the pond, like we're able to do it. I really loved this tip about including your kids in the conversation. I found that for, my 13-year-old, it's always a no until she can get a vision of what it is. Like, it's not like a starting in a place of no negativity per se, but it is a, "How can I get on board if there's nothing to be excited about? Because my world is so limited that I don't know what you're talking about."
Exactly, they don't know what to expect. They're so visual, they need to see it, which is why I wanted to take them to see the school today.
Mhm.
So and there's 2 that we're looking at. The one we saw when we were looking at schools when we first came in March, and that was my husband's first choice, but I thought the school was too big.
Mm.
Now I'm like, maybe it was a good choice, but again, they need to visually see, and I think because I took them to the school, it's like I can win them over.
So did you do that when deciding on the country? Like, so when you guys were thinking about moving to, just like logistics wise, let's say that, okay, we're all sold. Everybody listening here is like, and y'all have heard me say this phrase, and I really want to emphasize this is one of the beauties of following Sanaya on Substack and gathering her information. It's not just conceptual like we're talking here, it's practical, right? Real steps. She's going to be having a great summit coming up soon, and I'll have the details below and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but just with the actual logistics around it, because there are grown up things, money, passports, housing, shipping. Like, there's real things that we have to figure out. But again, I'm learning more and more that, especially because of technology, if you're gonna move 2 cities over across the country, you could move to Copenhagen. You know what I mean? Because it's like a very similar, outside of some of the passporty related things, like the logistics are the logistics. So what I want to know is, do you go to these places in advance and do you take the kids? When I am discovering a new church, I go first, right? Because I don't know if I'm going to walk in there, everybody's going to be, in outfits doing craziness. I don't know. So I'm like, let me scope this out before I bring the babies. So how do you guys process it? If Do you take them first so they can be excited? Do you not? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So when we went to Copenhagen, me and my husband went alone. I mean,
Mhm.
at that time, Mia was only 8 months, so it didn't make sense to bring her.
Sure.
And we had to go look at nurseries, schools, houses, all the things in a weekend. When
Wow.
we did this move here, we did bring the girls because we wanted to show them schools. We wanted to then actually have them visually see where we were potentially going to live because we
Mm.
hadn't made the official decision. We wanted to make the decision after that visit. So we did come out for, I think it was a long weekend, Thursday to Sunday or something, and live like a local. That's what I said. I just did a whole video
So
on
nothing
living like a
touristy.
local.
Nothing touristy. It's
Yeah,
not, "Oh, we're going to Disneyland," because that's actually a false representation of what it would be like.
exactly. You want to go live like a local, visit schools, make the appointments, get connected in some of the expat groups of the country you're going to, and try and meet people. Like set up, be intentional when you're going somewhere because I think that's what helped us. We connected. We had some friends here, so we connected with them. got them to see the girls, talk to the girls about school that they go to, and see the houses that they live in. We saw 5 other, they call them compounds over here, compounds that we could potentially live in then.
That doesn't make me
Uh,
feel weird. I'm here for the compound life. I literally am like, everybody in one spot, like gas is expensive. Let's all live together. Like, I love a compound. Now, what is a compound over
you
there though? Is it actually like a group of homes or what is it?
Yeah, it's a luscious place.
Oh wow.
So they have
Stop it.
villas.
Stop it. She's selling us, y'all. Just careful now. We're all about to be neighbors.
Yeah. The compounds have villas or you can have apartments, but
Mhm.
then the facilities on compounds are like the indoor pool, outdoor pool, paddle courts,
So kind of
basketball,
like a
tennis,
gated
everything you could
community
ask.
sort of thing.
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
Security all protected, yep.
Wow. So you just pick sort of the gated neighborhood that you think works for you. Now, with
Mhm.
these compounds, it's just curiosity's sake, y'all. It has nothing to do with me trying to move to the UAE. So, with these compounds, do you ever find that some of them, it's kind of like, I guess I can compare them to private schools out here where it's like, oh, yeah, that's the performing arts school. And oh, yeah, that school's the school for athletes. Like everyone kind of knows. Is there like an American compound? Is there like a compound where it's like, oh, yeah, this is the Richie compound or, oh, lots of Aussies live in this one? And then do you find that within the compound, like if there's like a cafe, it caters more to that area, or is it not like that?
No, that's well, I don't know yet. I know, like, there's a lot of compounds where you'll find a lot of locals living, or there was a compound that we visited that they were brand new and just selling in, and it was already sold to 80%, were Americans that were
Oh,
gonna be living there.
wow. Oh, wow.
So, it depends, like, there's a lot of so one thing, Qatar is 90% expats.
Mhm. That's
So
common in the UAE.
yeah,
Yeah.
they bring people in to work.
Mhm.
So, everywhere you go, all the compounds are just gonna be mixed,
Sure.
different nationalities.
Something to be said. So, before I let you go, because obviously you're gonna have so much more information for us later, the one thing that I have to ask, because I've always wondered this, and it is a total expat question, not a, local I can't ask a local. You know how we have, like, Little Italy in Chinatown here? Is there, like, a Little America in Copenhagen where, like, everything's like McDonald's and Burger King and KFC and they sell little flags and like, does that exist anywhere or am I I'm
You
just
can get
curious.
all the fast food everywhere. You can get it, it's all there. It's all
It's
in
a
the
very
mall,
pregnant
it's
question of me. I mean, I'm the person who was in the Maldives wondering if I could Uber Eats Popeyes over. So, I mean, I needed to know. I'm like, because sometimes when you are craving home, that can only be found in the bottom of a bucket of chicken.
yeah. Oh, tell me about it. Yeah, no, you can get every kind of food you want, you can find.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it, and honestly, again, you guys all heard me say it's free to find out. So, if it has even been the tiniest little worm in your brain where you have said to yourself, I wonder what it would be like, and is this something that's possible for me, or is this even reasonable as a concept? It doesn't cost you a penny to build a plan. It doesn't cost you a penny to get the information because you never know what life is gonna call you to, and you never know where something's gonna shift, and Sanaya is a great resource because it is not just information that's like one of the things I love about you is that you're very frank, you're very honest. You're like, "Look, this part's gonna be terrible, and Imma tell you exactly why." You know what I mean? Or, "You think it's gonna be this time frame, but girl, no," and I love that about you. So can you tell us a little bit about this summit that you're pulling together? I know I'm gonna be there, very saltily writing down notes about how I need to move. So tell me about this summit.
Yes. So on January 18th, I'm having the Your Expat Life Summit. It's basically the family blueprint for you to live internationally.
I love
I'm
it.
going to have experts on to help you look at international schools, looking at remote working, and finding housing. So,
Oh.
and we're also going to have other moms on there that have done it so that you can ask questions to them and see that it's really a thing that you can pick your family up and and live sustainably in another place.
Oh, you're making it too easy. Or make it too easy. Y'all will have the details below. And we'll drop the links so that you guys are able to check that out and sign up. You'll see me in the room taking my notes too, just because I like to know. You know what I mean? Like I love to, whether it's fantasizing or, you never know what's going to happen. So I just like having the details and it's always better to be prepared. So thank you so much for taking out the time for sharing this. And for always landing in my inbox with, a new way to dream.
Thank you for having me.